Hello there guys, welcome to Dino's Vault and welcome to yet another episode where I talk about a relevant topic that you kept asking me to do a video about. Now this is 20 points that I want you to note or keep in mind when you go out to buy a used bike or a used superbike. Now this is really important topic because now the second-hand bike or the used bike or the used superbike market has really grown multiple times when compared to few years prior, because we have a lot of sport bikes. We have the biking culture growing at a rapid pace ever than before, and now it's all the more relevant for you to watch out to make sure you don't get cheated or you don't get taken for a ride. So as far as I'm concerned, I try to share all the relevant points that you need to keep in mind when you set out to buy your dream bike out there. So these are the 20 points that you need to keep in mind when you set out to buy your dream bike if it is a used one. First of all is the visual inspection. Always do a 360-degree walk around and observe the motorcycle very closely, right from the paint finish to the panels to the nuts and bolts and the fitting, the fairing, the front fender, rear fender, the shock absorbers, the brakes, the brake pads, the tires, or the handlebar, and everything. You have to be very careful while inspecting visually whether there's been any kind of an untoward incident, any kind of a crash that they are trying to hide from you. So that is very important. First, 360-degree visual inspection, checking the paint quality and checking for any scratches or rust. Now rust is a major issue, especially in faired motorcycles. They just try to put the fairing on top or slap the fairing on it and try to hide anything like any exposed wires or any wiring issue. So you make sure that you remove the panels and check what's hiding inside the panels as well, just to make sure when you're ready to dish out that kind of money, I think you have the right to inspect everything before you make the deal. So if it is a naked bike, it's far more easier, everything is visible. But in case of faired motorcycles, that's where a lot of things happen. Like there was an incident where the chassis itself was broken and welded back into place, and that bike was sold to a friend of mine, which was a big I mean, he felt very hurt and very sad at the end of the day. But we learn by mistakes and we learn by experience. So I'm sharing this experience that you don't get fooled. Second point are the tires. Now tires are very important. First of all, to get good road grip and to make sure you don't land up in trouble after buying your dream superbike or your dream motorcycle. Now the tire replacement cost, if you're not careful, can set you back by a few thousands of rupees. So you have to be alert, check the tire life and the tire tread pattern, when they had changed the tires and how much life is left for the tires. That makes it very important while cutting the deal, because you can deduct the amount for the tires if there is a need to replace the tires completely. Now if it is a superbike, obviously you'll have to slap on Pirellis or Metzeler's, which are pretty expensive, so you can cut the margin by around 10 to 20k on the actual price that they are quoting. But if it is a regular MRF tires that need to be replaced, I think 10 grand you will get a pair of 2 tires, good radial tires. So I think that should be a reasonable ask. So the main point here is you have to look at the tires and see how much life is left. That was the second point. Third point, next point is the handlebar. Now just in case there is some kind of a minor tip over or a minor crash where the handlebar gets affected and the handlebar is not straight, when you sit on the bike, try to put it straight and check whether the handlebar is straight or not. Another thing is the cone set. If the cone set is damaged, when you take a test ride, you can feel that there's some kind of a sound, kind of a tuck kind of a sound each time you get into a pothole or a speed breaker. So watch out for that sound. Just check whether the cone set is fine and check whether the handlebar is perfectly aligned or not, whether it is perfectly straight or not. Fourth point are the clutch plates. Now clutch plates are another important thing when you're buying a used bike or a used superbike, because again they can set you back by a few thousands of rupees if you have to replace the clutch plates right after buying your new motorcycle. So it's always important to check the clutch plates for wear and tear, whether the clutch plates need to be replaced or whether they do not need replacement. And if they have been replaced recently, then that is a good deal for you. So how do you check for that? First of all, when you go for a ride, you check the lever action. If the clutch action is light and easy, and the clutch lever flexes easily, then that means the clutch plates are okay. With the lever action, if it is nice and freely flexible, that means the clutch plates are fine. But if it gets way too hard, then that means you need to replace the clutch, and or you need to inquire with them whether the clutch plates need to be replaced or whether the clutch cable needs to be replaced. Another way, people say that you can also feel while you're doing gear changes, when you pull the clutch completely, always make sure, usually we tend to do half clutch gear changes, which affects the mileage and also affects the clutch plates life. I mean, it results in more wear and tear of the clutch plates and reduces the lifespan of the clutch plates and also the clutch cable. So never use half clutch while shifting up or shifting down. Always pull the clutch lever completely and then shift up or shift down. So that again gives you, even if you're pulling the clutch completely and the gear shifts are very rough, that means there's either a problem with the clutch plates or the gearbox. That was the fourth point about the clutch plates. Fifth point is brake pads. Now, brake pads again have to do with saving your life. I mean, if it's a Superbike and the brake pads are worn out and the seller doesn't tell you, he's indirectly trying to kill you. That's the kind of responsibility that a seller needs to have. If the brake pads are worn out, you can make that out. I'm putting up some pictures as to how you can know that, or if you take a technician with you or get the bike evaluated at the authorized service center, they can tell you whether the brake pads need replacement or not. Because if the brake pads are worn out, you go out in all your glory with all the enjoyment and all the excitement that you have owned your dream bike, and you try to apply brakes and the brakes are gone, that means it's a highway to heaven or a highway to hell. So which is something that you don't want. That's the last thing on your mind. Another thing is, if the brake pads are new, even then you have to be careful, because the brake pads need something called bedding in period. Yes, the brake pads need something called bedding in period, which means when the brake pads are new, they don't work either. So you have to be careful. You have to bed them in, means run them in like you run in the engine. You have to accelerate, then brake, accelerate, then brake, accelerate, then brake, and that's how you bed in new brake pads. And that is very, very important. Even when you're picking up a new bike from the showroom, the brake pads are very new, and people don't realize that. They just go blasting through the straights, and when they try to brake, because the brake pads need bedding in, they don't work properly, and you might end up crashing, which is the last thing we want to happen. So be very careful. Brake pads bedding in is very, very important. Next, oil change, oil filter change, air filter change. This is sixth point. Now, this is about the general service, because if you have to check with them when was the last time they got the general service done, when the oil was changed, when the air filter was changed, when the oil filter was changed. So all these things need to be done. If not, if he hasn't done, or if service is due for the motorcycle, either you request him or her to get it done before you take the delivery of the motorcycle, or you can get it done as soon as you buy the motorcycle, and you can ask them to deduct that amount from the actual amount that he's quoting for the motorcycle. Next, seventh point, chassis damage. Now, chassis damage is something people try to hide, and very few people who are without any conscience and who are very greedy and cunning, only those guys do such kind of acts. Most people who respect motorcycles and respect bikers and who are actual bikers, they never do such kind of acts or fraudulent behavior with a fellow biker. So it doesn't make you or define a proper biker if you're trying to indulge yourself in such kind of acts where you're selling damaged motorcycles or just camouflaging all the whatever manipulations that have been done and just selling it for the sake of money. Then you're not a biker, my brother. If a true biker always watches out for a fellow biker and wishes him well. So please refrain from doing such things. So my request, just be careful. As I told you, if it is a faired motorcycle, just remove the panels, just check whether the frame and the chassis and everything is intact, and whether any welding or any manipulations have been done or not. If it is not, if it is in perfect shape, then you're in for very good machine and very good deal. But if there is something, then you can always find out and move away from that deal. Then another thing is, eighth point, because chassis damage can again compromise the once the chassis is compromised, high speed stability is compromised, and you don't know how the bike is going to behave. It's not going to listen to you, it's not going to be at its best. And if it is a super bike and chassis is damaged, then it's like a suicide machine. So please refrain from buying such motorcycles or selling such motorcycles. Next, eighth point is check whether all the lights are working or not. Now you might look at this as a normal thing, but this can also result in a catastrophic calamity. You buy a new bike, you think all the indicators are working, you think all the lights are working. If the flasher, high beam flasher is not working, the signal doesn't go to the person in front of you that you're trying to overtake, or asking them to make way for you, or asking them to wait until you make the pass. Or even when you turn on the indicators that you're taking a right turn or a left turn, you are thinking that the right indicator is working. The person behind you thinks that there is no indicator, and he tries to overtake you, and that can result in a cataclysmic crash. Make sure all the four indicators are working, make sure the headlamp is working and the tail lamp is working, make sure there are no wiring issues. Next, ninth point is the engine condition. So when you take the bike out for a test ride, run it through all the gears, that is very important, and run it through lower RPM, check the mid-range performance, and try to always even push it to the red line once, just to check as to how well the bike is performing in the top end band of the rev counter. So that's really important to check. Work it through all the gears, because sometimes there might be a gear problem in the second gear, in the fourth gear, or the fifth gear. So when you run it through all the gears, then you get an idea that the bike is truly refined and there's no problem with the bike. Even in the case of a super bike, when you run it through all the 6 gears, then you know how the performance is throughout the rev band. So that is very important. 10th point is whether the gearbox is smooth or rough. Now this is very important. Again, as I told you, if the gearbox, while changing gears, make sure you pull the clutch completely, because if you're just using half the clutch, you're burning the clutch plates, and the gearbox also becomes very rough and very stiff to use. So you don't want that to happen. You want smooth shifts. Pull the clutch lever cleanly and completely, and the gear shifts will happen smoothly. And check for the gearbox whether it is working fine in all the 6 gears or 5 gears, whichever your motorcycle might have. So this is about the first 10 points. We have still rest of the 10 points remaining. Okay guys, now coming to the 11th point, kilometer reading tampering. Now this is another scam that happens in the used bike or used superbike market. You see a bike 2016 model, if you see, they say that it's been done only 2000 kilometers or 3000 kilometers. Now there is a rare chance that the bike was not ridden and well maintained all along. That is a rarity, very rare. Exceptions are always there, but 99% of the time they have tampered the meter reading or changed the meter console recently, so it starts from 0 and you end up reading that it's only 2000 kilometers. Now earlier there was a conception that only analog meters can be tampered and digital meters are completely tamper proof. Well, that's not true. Digital meters can also be tampered. Always be careful that the kilometer reading is genuine. Make sure that the guy who's selling you the bike commits the actual genuine meter reading to you, such that you can take a call on whether to buy or not to buy the motorcycle. Now another important thing that matters, that is point number 12, is rim bending. Now this is a serious issue which can again land up you in trouble, and you can get into trouble with that, or you can get into a crash if you're not careful, if you have not inspected the bike carefully. Now rim bend, sometimes, like, another important thing is whenever you go to inspect a bike, whether it's a used normal commuter bike or a 150cc bike or a 200cc bike or maybe a super bike, go and do that only in the daytime. These guys who sell the bikes, they try to convince you that you come at night and check the bike, because when you check at night, a lot of things can be camouflaged and a lot of things can be masked because of the night conditions. So you can miss a few scratches, you can miss a few dents because of the dark scenario, and you can also miss noticing a rim bend if it is just a minute rim bend. If it's a huge one, maybe you'll make it out, but inspect the rim very carefully on both sides, front and rear, and make sure that there is no rim bend, because if there is a rim bend, when you take sharp corners and sharp lean angles, that's when the bike will be compromised and you'll end up crashing which is something that we don't want. Now, another important point number 13 is RC inspection. Now, RC inspection always asks for the original RC. Now, what happens here is sometimes what these guys do, they mortgage the bike, they give it to some financier, so the original RC is with the financier, but these guys, they say either the owner fakes stating that I've just misplaced it, I'll give it to you later, or the owner's friend or someone who has stolen the bike, like they claim to be the owner's friend or owner's cousin. So always insist on speaking to the owner directly, rather than believing that there's some owner's friend. Like in OLX, usually they say that I'm the owner's friend, I'm the one who's dealing with it. It might be a rare case where the owner trusts his friend and he's more knowledgeable and he can get him a good deal, something like that. That's another exception. But usually in case of fake frauds and stuff, if you insist on speaking to the owner, it's better. Always finalize and cut the deal with the owner in front of you and with the original RC in hand. So when you have the original RC, you have the chassis number, you have the registered number, and you can inspect as to the entire bike's history at the authorized service center. So that's what makes it really relevant. Another important point is the date of registration and the year of manufacture. Now these guys again cleverly say that it's a 2019 registered. Now you have to understand the difference between a year of registration and year of manufacture. Now it might be a 2018 model, so the actual depreciation happens from 2018 and not 2019 when it's a 2018 manufacture. So always check the year of manufacture. That's what counts, not the month of registration. It might have been a 2018 model that would have been registered in 2019. So actual depreciation starts calculating from the year of manufacture. So always keep that in mind. And also the depreciation rate, I haven't mentioned that point. That's the actual first point that you need to understand. So what is the depreciation rate? The depreciation rate is around 10% per annum on any bike, and for super bikes it might be slightly more because they are exclusive, they are hard to maintain. The depreciation rate usually is slightly higher on super bikes, but on an average you can keep it at 10% per annum. So if it is a 2018 model, you calculate 10% until 2021, and then you can get the actual rate that the bike deserves. Then whether, depending on the quality of the bike and the bike's condition, then you understand whether it deserves a little more money or not. But generally the market price is calculated with the year of manufacture and 10% rate of depreciation. Now another important point that you need to keep in mind in point number 13 while doing the RC inspection is hypothecation. If you turn the RC and look at the last line, it is mentioned as hypothecated to. Now this means that the bike has been financed. So it's been financed by a finance institution or a bank. So when there's a loan taken to buy the bike, that means it's hypothecated in the bank's name or the financier's name. So you can clearly see that it is written hypothecated to such and such a bank. You insist with the seller to get that changed, get a new RC. Whenever the loan is cleared, you get a brand new RC where it is registered on the owner's name once he has cleared all the loan. So you insist that the owner get that done, get the new RC with his name mentioned there, and the hypothecation completely removed, and then you get on with the deal. But don't never move on with the deal when the hypothecation is still mentioned and he doesn't have any proof that the loan has been cleared. Otherwise, usually they get an NOC and they get a document, kind of a file from the bank stating that they have cleared all the loan and they have the NOC with them. In that case also you can move ahead with the deal because he has received all the valid documents which authenticate him to transfer the bike to his name. Now point number 14 is insist on speaking to the owner. I've tried to cover that in the previous point itself because many people claim to be owners' friends or cousin and they try to sell away their stolen bikes, or maybe without the owner's permission they're trying to sell that. So you be a little watchful. Always insist on speaking to the owner, the registered owner whose name is printed on the RC card, rather than some Tom, Dick and Harry who claims to be owner's friend or something. Point number 15 is clear traffic challans. Now once you have the RC card in your hand, you either take a good picture of front and back portion, such that you can go home and check the e-challan site. Every state has their own traffic challan site now. So put the registered number and put the chassis number, and you get all the challans that are listed for that particular bike. So insist on the owner clearing all the challans before you end up buying the motorcycle, because that's very important. If you overlook and buy the bike, then you end up getting 20-30 challans on your head which you have to clear. So make sure that you insist that the owner clears all the challans before he transfers the bike on your name. Another important point, point number 16, is service, track record and service history, which you can find again with the registered number and the chassis number. Once you go to any authorized center, now everything is computerized, everything is noted and recorded in a digital format. So once you enter the registered number, you have the entire history of the motorcycle, whether he's servicing the bike on time, whether he's giving it for service at the authorized service center, or whether he's getting it serviced outside. So all these important points do matter. So it's always good to buy a bike that has a good service history or a track record, rather than the owner trying to convince you that he's taken care of it well. Now there might be another rare occasion where we have good experienced technicians setting up their own workshops, so it might have been maintained well, but it's always better to have a look or take a look at the actual recorded service record or the track record of the bike at the authorized service center. 17th point is buying from yeah, if you're buying from OLX, now I got this question many times, how to buy a used bike and how to make out a genuine seller from a fake one or a fraud one, especially when there are so many ads listed on OLX. Now OLX is a very good platform where you can find very good deals or very good products from genuine sellers as well. I've bought many electronic products and even bikes from ads mentioned on OLX, but you have to be watchful. So how do you be watchful? You read the description. If you read the description, if you understand if the owner is a genuine biker and genuine seller, he tries to list out every detail that you want to know about the bike. Now that's how you make out or understand that the seller is genuine, because he'll give you every detail possible to convince you that he has taken care of the bike well. Sometimes the description itself is really horrible. When I have seen few instances where they say just super condition. Now super spelling will be SUPAR and condition spelling will be KANDISHAN, which is like not even one, almost most of the characters not matching with the actual spelling of the word. So in that kind of scenario, you almost lose your mind. So better stay away from such kind of ads which are not at all logical. But if the owner or if the seller is genuine, he tries to list out every detail possible to convince you. So that is a kind of a hint or a sign of a genuine seller. Even if he is a genuine seller, you have to be on your guard and follow all these points before you end up buying the motorcycle. Next, point number 18 is check the suspension spring action. When you take the bike out for a test ride, do keep a keen eye on the suspension, because suspension is very expensive, be it the front suspension or the rear suspension. If you can hear some kind of a tuck kind of a sound each time you hit a pothole or a speed breaker, that means something is wrong with the suspension. You have to check for fork oil leakage or fork seals, whether they are gone, whether they need to be replaced, whether the fork oil needs to be replaced, whether the rear gas charge shock absorbers, most of the bikes nowadays come with gas charge shock absorbers. If the gas has been leaked, then the shock goes flat on its face, so you don't feel the shock working well or the spring action working well. So you have to keep a check on that and understand whether the shock absorbers front and rear are working properly or not. Point number 19 is test ride. Now, be it a new bike or a used bike, always insist on a test ride, because you have the right to test the bike before you buy it. You can't just imagine things. You have to ride it properly, responsibly, not rashly, just because you got your hands on the bike, but ride it responsibly, test it sensibly, and make out whether all the whether the brakes are working fine, whether the throttle response is working fine, whether the clutch is working fine, whether the gearbox is working fine, whether the road grip is good, whether there is any rim bend or not, whether the road tires are offering good road grip or not, whether the engine is performing well in the lower RPMs, in the mid RPMs and the higher RPMs, whether there is any kind of a glitch in the lower RPM that the engine is snapping out on you, whether the engine is shutting down. when you're just in the lower RPMs, lurking in the lower RPMs. All these important things you need to keep in mind while you are taking a test ride. So test ride is a must, and never ever buy a bike without testing or taking the bike out for a test ride, especially if it is a super bike. Run it through all the 6 gears if it is a super bike or a sport bike. Run it through all the 5 gears if it is a commuter motorcycle, because sometimes problem might be lurking in one gear, one particular gear. So it might be a 4th gear, it might be 5th gear, it might be 2nd gear also. So always be watchful. Finally, 20th point. Now, just in case all these points you think is way too tiresome for you to perform on your own, just take a technician along with you. You can pay him some nominal amount for coming along with you, and request him to do all the respective checks, and he will do the job for you. You can sit back and relax, and then you can take a call whether you want to go ahead with the purchase or not. Taking the technician along with you is absolute must, because though we might have good knowledge as bikers, these technicians deal with motorcycles day in and day out. They can make out even the minute problem in the motorcycle. So always take the expert advice of a technician, an experienced technician, an honest technician with you, such that he can guide you properly. So these were the 20 points that I wanted to share with you. It's super hot actually. I can't turn on the fan because again, wind noise will get recorded, and I can't turn on the AC because there is no AC in this room. But I'm just trying to help you guys out and share all the important relevant info that you need to keep in mind, such that you don't get cheated or you don't get taken out for a ride when you go out to purchase a used motorcycle or a used super bike. So if you found this video useful, please do hit the like button, please do comment, and share the video with your friends, because we don't want any of our biker brothers to be cheated. So for now, I just hope you found this video useful. If you have, stay subscribed and stay tuned for all the action that's coming up right here at Dino's World. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Take care and God bless.